Ian Ridley is an experienced sports journalist and author who I've long admired. I gave up watching boxing on television when you had to pay to watch, and when you suddenly had several world champions rather than just the one. But I still enjoy reading books about boxing, and Ian has published one that is a compelling read. I knew little about the so-called fabulous Barker boys prior to reading Ian's book with Darren Barker. The book's called Dazzling Darkness. So I sat down with Ian Ridley to talk about Darren Barker, learn more about Darren Barker, and at the end of the interview you have the chance to win a signed copy of that hardback book, Dazzling Darkness, so stay tuned.
I was first attracted to the story really by a therapist friend of mine called Bruce Lloyd, who said, I want you to meet this boxer. And he happened to be working with them, and with the boxer's consent he said, why don't the two of you get together? He's got a great story, I think you might be the guy to write it. So he introduced me to Darren Barker, we hit it off, and I've been with Darren for 7 years really on this story, following him, been in the gym with him. And as I discovered his story and a lot about him, it was this kind of strange dynasty of his father was amateur, he was ABA champion, Amateur Boxing Association champion, won it at Wembley Arena. The same night Frank Bruno became ABA champion, and he beat the great John Lyon, who was from Liverpool, was ABA champion 5 times. It came from his dad. Darren was the oldest brother, and he decided he wanted to fight, went to Finchley Boxing Club and then on to Repton, where his dad Terry had been a fighter. But Gary was the talented one. Darren will tell you that Gary was the talented one. Darren originally did it to make his father proud, as dads, as kids do with their dads, but Gary was the hot shot, and he was junior ABA champion very quickly within a year of taking it up. He went to Australia and became junior Commonwealth champion. He went to Texas and became junior Olympic champion. Everyone said that Gary was going to be the boy, he was going to win a gold medal.
But his life was taken away.
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks before Christmas in 2006. Gary was about, as I understand it, to be made a member of the Great Britain squad for the Beijing Olympics 2008. Gary had fought in Scotland on a Friday night. Darren had fought also on a professional bill in his early days as a pro. And the two of them on the Saturday night went to a boxing dinner in Essex, and afterwards said, let's, look, we've both won fights, let's go out for a night. And they went down the West End. They weren't drinkers, the boys. They sat in a nightclub and talked in the corner until the early hours, then went back home. At which point Gary announced he was going to go up to Leicester to see his girlfriend Jess, who was at Leicester University. And he set off early in the morning. They tried to stop him, but he seemed fine, he seemed okay. It was a cold morning. Unfortunately, he appeared to have fallen asleep at the wheel, rolled the car around Toddington Services on the M1 at about dawn that December morning. And that was the day Gary's life ended.
And it was the day that Darren's life changed, obviously, and was he interested in boxing then, or did he think about giving up?
Well, it changed the whole landscape of life for the whole family, really. I mean, they were a Christian family, but they naturally struggled to come to terms with the loss of a son at the age of 19, loss of a brother, and there was a sister as well, Daisy. So Darren, by his own admission, went off the rails, really. I mean, he had a car that was his pride and joy, a second-hand Mercedes. He sold it. He was going to go travelling, but he got as far as Las Vegas, and all the money went within a couple of weeks. And he came back. He didn't fight for 10 months. He tried to go back to the gym. Just his heart wasn't in it anymore. And he completely lost the plot, really, by his own admission. So he didn't know what he was going to do with his life. The alternative was to go into his dad's business as a painter and decorator. And he wasn't getting on with his dad when he worked with him. So he tried to go back to the gym.
Right.
2 or 3 times it didn't happen, and then he was introduced to this therapist, Bruce Lloyd. Bruce Lloyd is a therapist that specialises in trauma resolution.
Okay.
People have been through some kind of trauma, and he had some sessions with him, and Bruce kind of turned him around, really. The idea was not to get him back in a boxing ring.
Okay.
The idea was just to help him deal with his grief. But after a few months of going, Darren decided he wanted to get in the ring again, and he did, and he fought again as a pro and got back on track. I mean, the simplest thing would be to say everything was happy ever after, but you know, you've got to know Darren Barker. There's never going to be a simple path after that with Darren. After every fight, pretty much, he wanted to quit. You know, he was never a natural-born fighter, but he knew it was what he was supposed to be doing. He wanted to honour Gary's memory, and he still wanted to make his father proud and his family proud. So that's why he kept going. Out of the ring, probably Darren, you would sit and you'd meet him and say what a smashing fella he is. He's probably, it'd be hard to see that he was a boxer because he's quite a gentle soul. But when roused, Darren, I think, can be quite fearsome, as you see in the ring. But it's controlled aggression in the ring. Obviously, it's a kind of disciplined skill rather than violence, as you well know, in a boxing ring.
And in the ring, let's specify, what were his greatest achievements in the ring? What did he win?
Well, he was first off Commonwealth champion at middleweight, then he became European champion at middleweight, and then Eddie Hearn got him a title shot against Sergio Martinez. They were looking for an opponent. Nobody really wanted to take on Sergio Martinez, who was one of the best top 5 pound for pound fighters in the world at that particular time in the middleweight, certainly the undisputed middleweight champion. But Darren said, you know, I'll take him on. Went to Atlantic City. And he gave him a heck of a fight, took him to the 11th. He broke Martinez's nose quite early in the fight, but Martinez was such a great champion, such a fantastic fighter, that he found his way back from it, and he knocked Darren out in the 11th round. And again, Darren thought, well, I'm not going to fight again after that. You know, I fought for a world title. It was a familiar pattern for him. But then he got another shot at the IBF world title against Daniel Gill back in Atlantic City, and this time he really fancied it. He couldn't train properly. He was doing some very unusual training at that particular time, which involved aqua therapy with a trainer, a lot of swimming, a lot of running in the pool, really, because he couldn't do his running around the streets anymore because of the pressure on his hips, and he'd had 2 hip operations by this point. So his training was limited, but he had this amazing fight with Daniel Gill, an Australian, in Atlantic City. Gill was the holder, and Gill put him down in the 6th, and you thought that was the end of it, and Darren was down for a count of 9 and got up at 9 and somehow hauled himself back in the fight and got the decision. Gill's camp appealed the decision months later, but you know, Darren held on to the belt, and that was it for him. He felt he'd done absolutely everything he wanted to do in the fight game, really. He made one defence against the German, Felix Sturm, but his hips were still, he was giving him jip, and he went down in the 2nd and he couldn't get up.
Right.
So Felix Sturm took the title, but Darren retired. He'll describe himself as the happiest retired fighter ever.
Okay.
That's the aim, yeah. It's obviously not a completely faithful account of his life. It takes certain big episodes, the big fights, the big incidents in his life. And I sent the script a while back, about 18 months ago, to Ray Winston, who loves his boxing, as you well know, and was a Repton boy.
Yes.
When he was a kid, fought in the London ABAs, I believe. I think he won it. And Ray came back and said, I love this. And I said, I don't want you to play anyone in boxing. I don't want you to play a trainer. I don't want you to play a promoter. I want you to play the therapist.
Oh, right.
And Ray loved this. Thought it was very counterintuitive.
Yes, it is.
So I can see sort of there being some great scenes between Ray and whoever plays Darren. So he loved it and said, look, I want to be in this. Just when you're ready to go, let me know. So Since then we've progressed. We've got a company involved called Footprint Films. We're getting the development money together. As you know, it takes a long time to get a movie off the ground. We've been on this for 2 years now. Ray Winston told me from the outset it'll be 2 years before we make any progress.
Yeah.
But we're now beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel. We've got a director, we hope. So we're hoping over the next year that this gets off the ground.
Boxing ain't what it used to be, true or false?
It's true. It's no doubt true that in the old days when we all knew that there were 16 weights and 16 world champions, now there's like 64 world champions. There's 4 different governing bodies. There's new weights. Probably there's 3 or 4 world champions at every weight division. Unification fights are few and far between because people want to hold on to certain titles. It's complicated, and furthermore, terrestrial television won't take it these days. That's the big problem it has. Satellite TV, I guess you have to say that Sky in this country's kept boxing alive in many ways, and for that the boxing industry is probably very, very grateful. But it reaches quite small audiences. All that said, you look back 18 months and George Groves and Carl Froch fought at Wembley in front of 80,000 people and plenty more on pay-per-view. So the audience is still there. And this is a golden era for British boxing. I think we have 12 world champions now. How many of those are genuine unification champions? You're probably only talking 2 or 3. But even so, this is a good time for British boxing. For boxing fans, it's a great time.
Okay.
For the casual viewer, that we probably all were as growing up and would watch the big fights on BBC or ITV or whatever.
In the days when people landed punches on each other, as opposed to the first 6 rounds of the fight between Tyson Fury and...
Well, that was cagey. With heavyweights, you never know. That's the thing. It can all be over in 90 seconds. Because these are 2 big guys. One big punch can knock something out. Or they dance around each other for 12 rounds because they're so frightened of getting that knockout punch. Heavyweights have always been a law unto itself. People go gaga for heavyweights though, Vern. You'll go to... I was at Anthony Joshua's last fight at the O2 Arena, and I have to say there's 20,000 people in... Well, it was 15 because I think he had a substandard opponent. But people were going nuts for him, and they knew he was going to knock the guy out in 90 seconds. That's the top of the bill.
Right.
Still, people love it. They go crazy over a heavyweight like they don't do over any other boxers, really. But there's still great fighters out there. You know, in the middleweight division, you've got a fighter called Gennady Golovkin, he would be a great in any era. When I got into all this, and when I started talking to Darren about it, the finances of the fight game fascinated me, I have to say.
Yeah, they fascinate me.
Having been a football club director, and the finances of football interest me, they're very interested in boxing. You know, there are, at the smaller weights, you know, the flyweights or whatever, people can be fighting for world title for like $20,000.
Okay.
There is not big money in it. You talk about the heavyweights, you talk about the Klitschko's, you talk about Tyson Fury, you talk about Anthony Joshua, there is huge sums of money to be made.
Yeah.
Where Darren was in the middleweight division, if you're the champion, you get to call the shots, you make money. You know, you can get a good 7-figure sum for a title defence. When you're the guy who's challenging, often you're getting... I think he told me this for the book, and it's in there, that for his first challenge to Martinez, he got $250,000. But he got less for the Gill fight. Now, that sounds a lot of money.
It does.
But he's got to pay for all his trainer's expenses, he's got all his medical bills as well, which were big at the time. He's got to pay, he had a load of debts, even fighting for a world title before that, he had stuff he had to pay off. And then you talk about European title fights, you're often only getting £40,000 for those or whatever. So they're not huge sums of money. When you think that that's, you know, often 6 months' work, you're certainly in a training camp for 10 to 14 weeks.
Yeah. Hotel expenses abroad.
Hotel expenses, yeah. I mean, they tend to do a deal where you get 5 hotel rooms and 5 return flights for your entourage.
Okay.
But even so, you know, I mean, Darren, I think, ran out of expenses for his first title fight and had to wire the promoter for more, and that would come out of his purse at the end.
Right.
So it's not the huge sums you think. He made enough.
And he's going to be okay for the rest of his days.
Well, he made enough from the one title defence.
Right.
That was where he made his money against Felix Sturm, and that will pay off his mortgage and make sure that he's got a few quid if he invests it wisely into a business that will see him right.